Do you have aches, pains, and irks that your physician has told you to stop moving and stop exercising? Well, if you do, welcome to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast. In today's episode, we have Dr. Brian Romero, a rehab chiropractor and owner of REP Sports Medicine, to discuss training through injury. So if you are ready, listen up and lean in as we elevate your mind. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
I am so excited to welcome Dr. Brian on our show today. As mentioned, he is a rehab chiropractor and founder of REP Sports Medicine here in Phoenix, Arizona. He's passionate about helping active adults recover from injuries by addressing the root cause, which we love here at the Mindset Matter, providing long-term solutions that empower his clients to move confidently and without fear of injury. Dr. Romero launched his practice in 2023 after years of experience as an associate, where he had an incredible opportunity to work with elite organizations like the Phoenix Suns and the PGA with a doctorate in chiropractic and a focus on rehab, biomechanics, and strength and conditioning. He's built a practice that prioritizes care people truly deserve. He was a former Division I baseball player at Indiana State University, an avid golfer and fitness enthusiast, which we love around here. He has devoted his time to his daughter, Isabella. He is a new proud dad. She's 14-month-old, who he lovingly credits to both his why and the reason he's tired in the mornings. Coach Amanda can connect with that. With a mission rooted in God, family, and business, Dr. Romero is dedicated to growing his clinic, serving his community, and becoming the go-to rehab clinic in the Phoenix Valley. We are so thrilled to have him share his stories, insight, and knowledge. So welcome. Yay!
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Amanda here just had her daughter, Olivia, 2 months ago.
Yes.
Awesome. Congratulations. Is that
Thank you.
your first?
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
So you literally were in the same place a year ago.
A year ago.
Oh, yeah.
That's funny.
It's a wild ride, but it's one of the it's one of the best things that I've done, and I cannot believe that I love something so much.
Right. It's awesome. Well, yeah. So when was she born?
November 19th.
Oh, okay. So they're just, about a week apart, actually. Yeah.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to have you on here. So we did an episode on what we'd like to see changed in the medical industry. And it really was focused on, if you're going to practice on other people, you need to practice on yourself first. And what I was talking about more was like your own triggers, your own biases, like what do you think about people and larger bodies? And we kind of went more mindset detailed. But one of the things I meant to mention that I hate seeing all the time when we have clients come in, oh, I have this back injury. My doctor said I shouldn't X, Y, and Z. When we, want them to get stronger, but they say, nope, my doctor said no, is we are tired of that. We're tired of, having an injury and people just saying, no, I can't do that specific move because it's going to, I'm going to get more hurt. I'm scared or whatever that is. And I was like, you know what? We did miss that on that episode, but hey, why don't we make this an entire episode in itself? And I thought, who better than you to talk about it? So for our listeners, I kind of gave a background, but just share a little bit more of your background and how you integrate both the chiropractic care into the physical therapy. I have been one of your patients, so I know, but let's tell them so they understand.
Yeah. So when I got into the world of chiropractic, I guess I kind of knew what I was getting into, but I had more of I think the more old school thought of what chiropractic was, right? You go in, you get on the table, you get adjusted, heat packs, stim, ice, the works, right? And it's kind of a revolving door. And so, that was my initial experience with it. Needless to say, I still went to school for it because I fortunately had some mentors that showed me a different route. So I went to school with the intention of focusing on a more active approach to care and just understanding that there was more. There was more that could be done than just than only an adjustment. And I think just even from just researching and questioning things. I'm always questioning things, and so that I can just gather as much knowledge as possible. But for me, it was does an adjustment and understanding what that even is, like, does that really do what what they say it does, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a lot of misinformation out there about what it does and how it helps and so on and so forth. So I took that as a tool and was like, hey, this is awesome. This could be really helpful. It can help someone, anyways, temporarily kind of get out of pain, right? They feel good, loosens you up. And then there are so many other aspects that can help somebody heal as well, like movement, exercise, obviously nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
all the other factors, the mental side of it, right? The psychology. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I decided to put all of those tools together and utilize them to treat patients, and now it's more of when people are dealing with back pain and or shoulder pain or whatever it might be, right? It just allows me to dive into those things a little bit more and take a more broad approach versus just sticking in one lane.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, I like you mentioned early on, I was an associate for a couple of years when I first moved here to Phoenix, and was treating um, kind of like old school ish, if you want to call it that. A little bit more adjustments. That was the focus, and I knew that I could do more, but I was confined within someone's practice, so I couldn't do everything. And so that
Mm-hmm.
was the biggest reason why I opened up and started my own practice.
Yeah. What I love about this is, what we do at the Mindset of Matter and what you do are so similar. Whereas, hearing your story, it really connects to me because what I would, in my business was seeing that, people all knew how to lose weight and they'd go on these diets and they'd, exercise, but we weren't getting to the root cause of why they couldn't sustain whatever it is they were searching for. And you do a very similar thing of, okay, we have this injury, this symptom, and I can give you temporary relief, but why not give you long-term relief and do it in a way that, is going to not only strengthen you physically, but also kind of, for me, when you taught me this, it was like, oh, like I'm also learning along the way. So if I do ever have tweaks or pains, like I could come back to what you taught me, which again is what we do as a company as well, which I absolutely love. Um, you know, I didn't ask this in the questions, but did you have any injuries in baseball?
I've had my fair share of injuries just overall. Nothing that was like debilitating that ever took me out of the game, but
Mm-hmm.
the shoulder, just classic shoulder issues, some rotator cuff issues. I'm 90% sure at this point that there is probably some sort of labrum tear, rotator cuff tear, or something.
Yeah.
In combination with all the weight training and all the other things that I've explored and exercise, have done it for long enough that I can kind of understand what's going on in the shoulder. But like you said, when you can figure out what's really going on, you can actually approach it and attack it. And I'm not going to fix the labrum tear, but I can fix everything that contributes to my shoulder and make it really functional. I don't have any limitations really.
Yeah.
That's
I
it.
love that.
So it's interesting that you bring that up because I think most professionals or most people would go to a professional. So, for example, let's take your experience and your knowledge out of this. You would go to a doctor, and the doctor would go, "Oh yeah, there's a labral tear. We see it. Let's do surgery, and let's make sure to ice, repeat, recover, go to PT, kind of, but be very cautious of it, right? And almost like babysit this." I think a part of that comes from them managing their own liability is they don't want to tell somebody, yeah, do whatever, and it'll be okay at some point. And then that patient comes back and they go, hey, you really fucked me up because I went and, hit golf balls with my son and that was bad. Um, but I think what a lot of doctors miss is the opportunity to recover the body or recover the injury just through movement alone and treatment alone, such as what you do. So, what I want to know what you do or why you recommend keeping that area mobile and moving as opposed to being overly cautious, like we see a lot from the medical community.
Yeah, so my take on movement, and I guess a lot of these things are going to depend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which is everyone's lovely answer. But, um, an acute injury, let's say someone comes in with an acute low back or like what we call like a hot disc, right? Maybe they freshly injured their back, their discs are inflamed, and they can barely move, right? I've seen people walk in with walkers before, and it's scary to think about. Um, but our biggest thing is introduce any movement that we can in that situation, right? What can we do? How can we move to make you feel like you're not aggravating your symptoms, but keep your body moving, right? If we can get some blood flow moving and your joints moving, they're going to be happier. Now, it's all going to be dependent, right? Like, someone comes in like that, I'm not going to ask them to touch their toes or stand up, and do crazy things. But if we can get this much movement out of them, great. Now we're moving in the right direction versus doing nothing at all. Um, Again, I mean, you can do nothing at all, and it will eventually resolve. It'll calm down, right? The inflammation will settle, um, but it might just take a little bit longer time, right? And it's kind of like, I use an example of when you're sick and you do nothing for 3 or 4 days. You're laid up in bed, and your body. Outside of the sickness, your body aches, it hurts, and that first day you get up to go move and maybe go for a walk, you feel great. Outside of
Mm-hmm.
obviously you're getting sunshine, your body's moving, and it feels good. So I think promoting movement in any sense, acute or chronic, is going to be crucial. Your body wants movement, it craves movement, and that's how we heal. I'm a big believer of that.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I've seen this with myself. And, what I'm hearing is just you have that balance of, we're not just being sedentary, but and just trying to get that blood flow movement there. This may be a silly question, but you did say, over time it will heal. Is there any, and again, I know this is case by case what I'm going to ask you, but in certain situations, does being sedentary actually make the problem worse?
I would say yes, and only because um, you're not creating any changes to your body, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Mm-hmm.
let's just say, we deal with active individuals for the most part, right? People that are trying to be healthy, some people that are trying to perform, maybe. And, obviously, we have people of all levels. Let's just say, we've got a new mom, right? And her back hurts, right? Let's just put it that way.
She's
Mom,
smiling.
yeah, she's like, my
Tell me
hand hurts.
more.
She's like,
Keep
everything hurts.
going.
Um, let's say, back's in pain, right? Well, one, she doesn't have a choice. She's got to pick up the baby. She's got to do things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's just say baby's a little bit older, maybe can handle themselves for a little bit more. If she does nothing at all, right, and the inflammation goes, passes on by, she's able to move again, she's able to do her normal, things. Eventually, because she hasn't fixed what's going on, right? She just waited. All she did was
Mm-hmm.
wait and let the inflammation pass. Eventually, she's going to get put in a situation again where maybe she has to help pick something up for her little one, or she is trying to play with her little one, and it just takes one thing for it to irritate it again, and then you're back to square one, right? And so I would say not moving and not learning patterns and movement and the proper way is not good for anybody.
Mm-hmm. You see these like memes on Instagram of like being over 40 and like the ways we injure ourselves. Like, it's usually, moving in a plane of motion that you're not moving in, right?
Yeah.
Because you're just usually sitting down at your desk, like going forward and back. And so I think of that when you're talking about the mom, it's just that one thing and pop, there's the problem again. So no, that's super helpful. Why then does there's this common misconception of not training through rehab or injury? Why do we think that is? It sounds like it's more old school mentality, but why? And then I guess I want to follow that up with, are we seeing that evolve now in 2025?
Yeah, I definitely would say that I think it's more of an old school mentality. And I think people are becoming a little bit more, a little bit wiser and advocating for themselves a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that is disrupted in our medical system, and so I think people are starting to take that foot forward and
Mm-hmm.
incorporate a little bit more pushback or question. I would definitely say it's more of an old school mentality, but it's still out there. It's still getting pushed, and people are still quick to give injections. They're still quick to,
Yes.
do a lot of things before exhausting some of the conservative options. Um, and so I'd say, yeah, I'm definitely hopeful, and I can see the trend moving in the other direction because usually people that come in to see us, it's not just, well, obviously, yes, they're in pain, but it's not just because they're in pain. It's because that pain limits them in some way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so whether it's exercise or playing with their kids or, hiking,
Mm-hmm.
golfing, whatever it might be, there's something external bigger than just the pain. And so,
Yeah.
um, again, these people, and some people just push through it and they live with pain, which also is not normal either. But yeah, fortunately, I think it's changing.
Yeah. I have a few male clients. One is a physician himself, and he refuses to deadlift, do any sort of hip hinging because of his back. So, I'm trying to work around it to get him stronger, but he won't, in his mind, see how he's improved. He's a physician himself. And then another who is a little bit more open. And it's just funny to see the contrast between the two of the one that's open. We're working on mobility and stability, right, in movement. They're both out of state, or I would be sending them to you. Um, and the other is just he's completely limited. It reminds me, and Amanda and I talked about, the the pharma push in other areas, even in health and wellness of no, just take this injection, and in your case, like just cortisone shots, like we're not getting to the root cause of things. We're not teaching lifestyle change. And for us, and it sounds like for you too, that's why I want to have you on. It's like, I want to be fired as quickly as I can because we've resolved the underlying issue, and given you the skills and the tools to move on. And I think for obviously medical practices, that sounds like um, the end to their practice when really, I think, as you're saying, consumers are going to be a bit more open to that of like, I don't have to be dependent on this doctor for the rest of my life or this medicine or injection or whatever it is. And I'm glad to hear that there is that movement towards, doing more of those conservative approaches. That makes
Well,
me
it's funny because you had mentioned, Doctor, that that your practice really is providing the conservative approach, where I would almost challenge that most people think the conservative approach would be to do nothing, to get the injections, to rest and not move, right? Because conservative in their mind is limitation, whereas conservative in your mind is mobility, movement, and let's take a soft approach so that way you can return to what is kind of holding you back. So I found that really interesting of the juxtaposition between what people think is conservative, but what you're viewing as conservative, and you're trying to almost plot twist this for like similar to us of like, no, the diet isn't the problem, it's your mindset. No, the injection isn't your problem, it's like your lack of movement, and then this injection only provides more of that because now you're numbing yourself, not able to feel if this movement is for you or working against you. And then, Christina, you brought up some points with the guys that you're working with as far as injuries. And so, Doctor, if you could go over some movements that you generally prescribe or work with for common injuries. So, like ankle sprains, strains, low back pain, even like if you work with pregnant women or postpartum women, what you usually do for them. And again, like we're saying, it's definitely going to be on an individual basis, but I would just be curious to see how you describe movement as far for our audience in a different way that we do, but also what you give to movement for these common ailments.
Can I streamline this? And I feel like a lot of our clients have low back pain. So maybe that would be helpful to just focus
start there.
on that.
Low back pain.
Yeah, let's do that
one. I'll have to pull up the stat and maybe get it over to you guys, but I'm pretty sure that there is like 80% of people in the United States have experienced low back pain at some point in their life.
Yeah, it's something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, it's a high percent. And then like of those 80, it's like 60% of them have a recurring thing. Yes. And so, I see a lot of people in my office with low back pain. And so first and foremost, like we said, it's definitely case to case dependent, but biggest thing is what are they trying to do, right? What's their goal? Am I working with a power lifter that's trying to break records, or am I working with a mom that's trying to pick up her child, right? Now, to a certain extent, obviously there's some crossover, right? Depending on where they're at, their conditioning, all that stuff, right? But there is one technique that I do love using, and it actually takes things all the way back to when you're a little kid. So,
are you doing DNS?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I do a lot of DNS to start.
What is DNS?
Yeah, can you explain that?
I'm like,
So DNS is a technique essentially that they study babies. They study how babies move and their progressions through their early stages of life. And from, obviously laying there and trying to figure out how to rock and roll, to turning over onto their belly, to then learning how to prop up on their hands and progress up to maybe hands and knees, hands and feet, and then, so on and so forth, upright and all that. And so we can study, or they've studied all this and essentially put together a program to teach that to people. And essentially just rewires their system, rewires them back from the start. Awesome. And so that's the a big thing for people that are in have low back pain. We go, okay, there's obviously a lot of compensations and changes going on, different patterns that you're developing to get away from your pain. So let's just go back to ground zero, get the basics all situated again, and that's where we start. And for the most part, I'd say a lot of people respond to those because they're not intense. They're not heavy loads. They're small movements, working with their breathing and all that stuff. And it really ties things in. I feel like for my clients, I've seen a lot of great benefit and help out of that technique. And then, once we get them essentially moving back and feeling confident again, then I push straight into what they're trying to do. So again, if it's, I guess, a common thing for a power lifter and a mom is they both have to squat, right? And so we're teaching squat patterns. We're teaching the techniques that they can use to help protect themselves while they're doing that. And so really at the end of the day, it all kind of ties in together no matter really who you are. So we all have to squat and we all have to deadlift and we all have to do, certain things. And now it's all, again, case to case, but there's a lot of crossover.
I love that because Amanda, I've heard you say DNS recently.
So Dr. Austin does DNS. So that's where I know it from.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I learned something new today. And again, I'm just like, my brain is going crazy. I'm like, there's so much crossover in what we do because we go back to the beginning. I talk about it all the time. We talk about you had hunger and fullness cues as a child. You know how to say no as a baby. You were born with the ability to say no, like all these things. So just making all those connections. You talked about protecting, the self. A lot of people get scared. And I have a client, Kelly, who we have worked through her rehab. She had terrible low back pain. And we were talking the other day and she's like, I haven't had any of that. And this woman cares for her husband who has MS. So we do really a lot of functional movement, like helping, a lot of rowing, a lot of squatting with the weight in the front here because she has to help get him up in different positions. And she's like, I haven't had any pain, since we've been working through this. But she's, the exception where a lot of people just are so scared, right? They're so scared of hurting themselves. So what advice could you give to our listeners who are like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to, re-injure myself.
Yeah, I would say that if you're, working alone, definitely hire a coach or seek out a professional. If you don't know and you're not confident in doing certain things, certain movements, then that's what we're here for, right? Is to help and teach and guide. And so that's definitely, I think, step one. And then as you move through that, I think introducing movements with graded exposure. We have to learn how to crawl before we can walk kind of situation, right? So, take it back to the basics and take it slow. And I think that's key. But I get this a lot because I do CrossFit. I do a bunch of different, it's not my only thing, but I do go to CrossFit. But people always ask me, like, they go, "You're crazy. Why do you go to CrossFit? Like, CrossFitters just get hurt." And I go, "Well, here's the thing. It's you get hurt if you're not prepared or you don't know how to do the things that we have to do in CrossFit, right? Mm-hmm. And that goes for anything. If you don't know how to move, then it's a bad exercise, right? Because you don't know how to do it properly. Or if you don't know how to deadlift, then it's a bad exercise because you don't know how to do it properly. You're not prepared to do this." And so I personally don't believe there is a bad exercise. I think everything is good. You just have to know how to do it and do it properly. And so, I think learning movement is so important for everybody, for you to be able to function for the rest of your life. If not, then, the other end of it is not so fun.
No, we had a whole episode on actual comparing, squat, deadlift to common things that women do in their lives, like picking up their baby, picking up the groceries, putting their luggage in the overhead bin. And, it's strength training, thank God, is now getting a better, more positive view, especially toward women, because again, you see women who are weak and who have bad posture and like you said, it going through life and seeing that it's hard for them. And so being able to learn properly how to do those things is going to make life so much easier and create more independence. Right? You're creating more independence in, being able to move freely, right? Without pain, independence from, as we talked about before, medication and, constantly being dependent on a doctor. And so we agree, hiring a coach, learning proper form. We personally, because we are online, our clients have the ability to send us form videos. We do a movement assessment from the get, which we use I think I've told you before, the Mind Pump. They do a Prime movement. What is it called, Amanda? Prime Pro? Movement assessment. So it's just kind of putting them through different ranges of motions for different body parts. And then we create mobility for that particular client to help in those different, whatever, aches and pains they have. And then at any point, or when we're introducing a new type of exercise, we have the ability to send form videos where they just take a photo or a video from the side and from the front, and then we can analyze it and send notes back. I even go to the point of screenshotting it, arrows, all the things, in an effort to ensure that we have good form. So I think for coaches listening, that's an important thing if we're not doing it to incorporate or add into their practice. So good.
Sure.
100%. I agree. One more thing on that is if you're not assessing and you're not actually, taking the steps to figure out what's going on, if you're not assessing, then you're guessing.
Yeah.
Right? We have to make things very, we have to see the numbers, see what's going on. If not, then it's going to be hard to get the results or desired results you're looking for.
Not me stealing, assessing, and guessing because I like something little rhymey.
Of course.
Amanda makes fun of me because I like things to rhyme. So thank you for that.
Well, I've got a question on that. So, from my own personal history of injury and kind of recovery, is I had a big separation between my mind and my body, where I allowed my mind to control what my body needed to be doing rather than listening to my body and letting my mind kind of tolerate that per se. When most of our clients, similar to that concept, is that they have a disconnect between their body and their mind, and a lot of times the injury can exacerbate that feeling of wanting to disconnect, fear of going through with it because they don't want to connect to that piece, or even per se they have a lack of activation. Like a lot of times I see a lack of activation with the glutes, and so it's like, how do you build that? And my question to you is, how do you see the mind body connection play a role in recovery from injuries? Or do you have any plans or like strategies that you use to reincorporate the two? Because I feel like that's really important for lifelong kind of sustainable change from the injury, and not letting the injury define them, because I find that too. They let the injury kind of guide their life instead of taking control and letting the mind reconnect to that piece, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I guess just so I can clarify,
Uh-huh.
more so, are you talking more so along the lines of like the psychological factor of this, or the actual physical, like you have a hard time connecting to a certain body part?
Let's go into the psychological.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, gosh, we could probably record an entire episode just on this. But
Write it down, put it in the books.
Yeah.
oh man, the psychological factor to injury is and pain is it's a lot,
Mhm.
and so many things go into it. Your experiences, your environmental factors, how you handle stress and all those things. And so I early on like to attack all of the things that are going
Mhm.
on outside of just physical. I like to have a good idea of what's going on with this individual, and again, it's much more than just pain, right? We're treating humans here. We're working with humans, and that's something that we have to learn to connect to. So with clients that maybe have experienced trauma or are scared or all the things, they're it's definitely tough, and I have to kind of walk, toe the line a little bit. But I think with them, it's more so just constantly being in their, being their cheerleader, and always just letting them know they're doing a great job, taking it slow with them if you have to, and really finding certain things that they can connect to, and that puts them in a safe place, quote unquote, right? And so even with exercise, putting them in exercises or giving them certain things that empower them and make them feel strong and make them feel confident in what they're doing, instead of being like, oh, squat that, and it's like we got to pull it way back. And again, if we have to start low level, great, and you do that, and until they are crushing it. And that a lot of the times I've seen that it gives them the confidence, and it gives them that piece of like, okay, I can do this, like, and they can get past that sort of psychological factor and the fear that they've had with said movement. So there's this TED talk that I listened to. I was at a seminar, and just quick, like in a nutshell, I was at a seminar where we're talking about pain science, and the example was this gentleman was out on a run, and he was out, I think, on a trail run, and it was 3 or 4 or 5 miles in, and he felt something sharp around his ankle, and then it ensued with a lot of pain. And looks down, and he sees a snake off to the side of the trail, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I got bit by a snake!" Like freaking out, right? Goes to the hospital, gets taken care of, he's good. Well, months down the road, maybe even years down the road, he's on a trail run again, and he's doing his thing, and at some point he felt the same pain. He had this sharp pain and experience in his leg. When he looks over, there was no snake, fortunately. It was a branch that scratched his leg. But because of his prior experience, it was traumatic, it was crazy, right? His response in his body was to go into complete freak out mode and experience this intense pain. And so I thought that was really interesting. Again, talking about the psychological factor of it, experiences are huge.
Absolutely. Now, that, trauma in itself, any sort of trauma, it's not necessarily what happened to us, it's the story we make up about ourselves. So when he was, when a snake bites us, it's like, I'm going to fucking die. Like, I'm going to die right now, right? That's probably the story he made up about himself. Mm-hmm. And so then the brain goes into fight, flight, freeze, or please, as I say. And we get, fortunately, he goes to the hospital and is okay. But then we are hyper vigilant, right? So I say it, anything that sounds like, smells like, feels like, tastes like that very scary thing, our brain is going to have a very similar response. And that's that trauma response where something can happen to me that mimics in any way. It doesn't have to be, in that case, is like a branch in the snake, similar feeling, right? But the intensity of the response is so much higher. And, with our clients and most people go through trauma. Most people go through trauma. Everyone thinks it's this big T, like car accidents and, war and stuff like that. But even just the day to day, and it affects us in so many ways. But more importantly, the disconnect from the self, right? That disconnect from the self where we don't have a good gauge of our pain level, or even, when I say pain, some of our clients will push through, right? Where they're so traumatized from something else. Maybe it's not as spot on of like, I got bit by a snake. It's, if I don't work out, then I'm not good enough. So now they're pushing through. And, I love that you incorporate all of that in, because again, as you said from the beginning, it's getting to the underlying issue. And, of course, being able to provide that connection to self, which exercise does. That's the easiest way to get connected to your body, as long as you have someone there guiding you to say, where do you feel this? Activate here, and you've done that with me where you're like, okay, move your wrist this way. And I'm like, oh shit, there's my lats. And I think that's wonderful. And of course, you have this wonderful program they can also use as a referral resource, us, for the psychological stuff. So good. Okay.
I've got a question. How do you, because we're talking about psychology of this too, and then we've talked about the physicians and whatnot. So from your perspective of being in the medical field, how do you foresee getting the word out that reconnecting to your body through injury, or reconnecting to your body through trauma, reconnecting your body prior to going down these like surgery routes or intervention routes, how do you get the word out to physicians, to mental health therapists, to even dietitians, who are working with people on reconnecting to their body and their food? Because exercise plays such a supportive role in that, in finding their body. Like, where do you see your chiropractic platform, and maybe not just your office, but for others that are like-minded like you, of reaching those who have that misconception that exercise isn't part of the picture?
That's tough. That's for sure. But for me, if I can get one, the good thing is that a lot of them they're intertwined, they're interconnected, and you give one of those people a good experience, and that tends to spread like wildfire. Like Christina, you're working with a physician, right? Like, now, fortunately, it sounds like he believes in exercise, which is great. And, we're not going to win them all, but, even if you get a client of theirs that come in and they let them know about your experience and how this helped, and so on and so forth. And again, like I said, you're not going to win them all, but, we're going to try. Yeah. I try to connect with as many physicians in the field. Obviously, orthos and DOs and the works, right? Spine surgeons, the people that are the ones, offering these big procedures. And the good thing is, again, back to like, I think the trend is changing. The good thing is that a lot of them will aren't quick to cut, which is great. You know,
Yes.
there are some, unfortunately, there are some, surgeons that are, the day you walk in, it's like, right, let's go ahead and to get you set up for surgery, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I know firsthand there are a lot that are saying, hey, I think you should go try X, Y, Z, and if it doesn't improve, then we can consider a surgery intervention if it's needed. Myself, I actually am currently working with an orthopedic surgeon who has low back pain. And
Oh,
I'm like, well, this is great. Like, this is awesome.
yeah.
You're seeking, some help to learn. And again, it's funny, like they're brilliant human beings for one. But I was like, all right, let's figure out, let's go through a basic deadlifting pattern just to see, and he couldn't do it, or a basic squat pattern, and it was like, okay, this is where the problem is coming.
Yes.
It's your movement. It's these things. They don't teach that stuff in medical school.
Mhm.
They teach them how to be physicians and surgeons, and so again, I think you get one. I think it spreads like wildfire, which is fantastic um, in the health and knowledge.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
But that's the best we can do is just
Mhm.
let them know how we can help them out.
Yeah. We have, I would say about 60% of our client base is in the medical field
Mhm.
Yeah.
in some capacity.
I
And
love
the same thing, and I commend those people because I think there's this misconception that they should know everything about the body and like
Mhm.
being able to say, actually, I don't. And I'm going to find the person that does. And then you giving them that good experience, they then, refer people to you if they can. In our case, sometimes that can't happen. I don't know why, but referring their own patients to you, which is wonderful. Talking to their colleagues about the experience and so on. So I think that's a great way. Awesome. Well, as we close, I want to know what you would say is the most important takeaway that our listeners can have about continuing movement through rehab and injury, as we love little nuggets of knowledge.
Yeah. My biggest takeaway that I would love for everyone to take home with them is if you're experiencing pain, if you've been in a chronic pain, especially, just know that there's help. That you can have hope. You're not alone, and you're not going to be stuck in this. And again, there are a lot of people out here that are really passionate to help you out. And like Christina, like myself, and nothing makes me happier than to see a client come in pain, in fear, in all these things, and walk out feeling confident, feeling empowered, feeling like they can go do everything they were doing before, and I love that. That makes my world go round, and it's awesome. So, there's people out there to help out. Just do your research, do your due diligence to figure out the ones that are going to be there in your on your side to help you out and guide you the right way.
Yeah. I love that on your social media. Like that is, you highlight a lot of people who started in pain and then you show their progression. I think that's wonderful. Speaking of that, where can our followers learn more about your work and where can they follow you to stay connected with you?
Yeah, so I'm mainly on Instagram at rep _sports med. And I try to post as much as I can on there. A lot of educational things, some motivational, and just combination of a lot of things. But like yourself, Christina, we want to help, and I know that when you walk in the door, from that first moment, it's a different experience, and we pride ourselves in that, and we want to be able to, like you said, be the best in the valley, the go-to here in the valley, and just
Mhm.
let people know that we're on their side.
Absolutely. And he's literal magic. Like, I'm not even joking. I walked into his office, like, was it my neck?
I remember you've gone there a couple of times and you've been like, oh, that Dr. Brian.
It's
like,
magic.
yeah.
It's wonderful because, whether something in my neck, I have a Chiari malformation and all this junk in my neck, and it just kind of seizes up sometimes. And I was like, the Tin Man walking in. So thank you for that. Well, awesome. This has been so helpful. I know that our listener is going to take so much away from this. And if you are in the Valley, let them know where you're located. It's 40th and Thomas?
40th Street and Thomas. I'm inside of a gym. It's called Third Space Athletic Club. And that's where we handle all of our business. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you found this information helpful, please share this with someone who may have low back pain and needs to maybe do some rehab on it. If you love our podcast, give us a follow, subscribe, and we also love 5-star ratings and reviews. So you can find us on Instagram at Mindset of Matter Coaching or fitbyamanda.az. And if you just want to remember one thing, which would be silly of you to do from this podcast, we want you to remember this one last thing.
What you say in the mind,
you see in the mirror.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye.